The first question, though, is, why would you use topical stuff versus internal stuff, particularly when it comes to pain relief? And I get this question a lot. Well, is it better to put it on the skin? Is it better to take it internally? And that kind of depends on what you're dealing with. But when you think about topical, we have to remember something that it's not necessarily just an alternative for something pill form. They work very differently, and it's not like a consolation prize if you can't swallow pills. Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. So my medicine cabinet, at least in terms of things that I put on my body, topical things, has actually gotten smaller over the years, not bigger. When you've been doing this as long as I have, you stop collecting products and you start narrowing it into more of a small handful of go-to, this is permanently on hand for me at all times type of products. Now, in the supplement realm, the things that I'm actually ingesting, I experiment a lot. But with the topicals, I will try new things from time to time. In fact, there's a couple of new ones I'm going to share with you, new to me anyway, today. But for the most part, these are things that are tried and true that I've used for years, that I've had fantastic success with. Today's show is my topical medicine cabinet, and I'm going to do this in two parts. The first one is going to be focused on pain and inflammation, recovery from injury, that sort of thing. And the second one is going to be kind of all the other topical stuff, skin irritation and those types of things. These will be pretty short shows, but I think they're going to shine a light on, I know they're going to shine a light on some of my absolute favorite products and things that you probably will want to know about. So the first question, though, is, why would you use topical stuff versus internal stuff, particularly when it comes to pain relief? And I get this question a lot. Is it better to put it on the skin? Is it better to take it internally? And that kind of depends on what you're dealing with. But when you think about topical, we have to remember something, that it's not necessarily just an alternative for something pill form. They work very differently. And it's not like a consolation prize if you can't swallow pills, right? And in most cases, I think you are going to get your best results if you're doubling up, if you're doing something internally and externally. Remember that your skin is your largest organ, and it's a real point of entry for the body. They're, depending on who you ask and what the research is, 40-50% of what you put on your skin ends up in your body. And that's not a talking point. That's actual physiology. We know that. When something hurts in one specific spot, a shoulder, a knee, a finger, lower back, whatever it is, going straight to the systemic oral anti-inflammatory means that every cell in your body is exposed to that compound to treat one localized problem. Topical application, of course, lets you focus and concentrate on that one spot that actually needs it. And in a lot of cases can actually be a smarter way to approach it. Or, as I said before, going both ways in many cases is going to be the absolute best. Let's talk first about one of the newer products to me. It's kind of new, but it's really old. And I'll explain what I mean by that. It's made by a company called Amane Naturals. They're right here in Utah, 30 minutes from here. In fact, the woman who developed these products has become a friend of mine over the years. She owns a little health store called Melanie's Nutrition in Tooele, Utah. If you're familiar with Utah, you know where I'm talking about, kind of over the mountain from where we're at. And Melanie is a master herbalist, and she developed Amane Naturals as her answer to non-toxic body care things. And it started with things like bath bombs and soaps and deodorant, which she still has all of those things. And we have many of those things here at Vitality Nutrition, but recently has started getting into balms. And what I love about Melanie is that she's not trying to reinvent the wheel. She's just trying to kind of hone and refine these formulas to make them even better than some of the stuff that she and I have known about for decades. She actually has a product called Deep Tissue Salve, which is, I believe, her number one selling product, if I remember correctly from what she was telling me. She infuses whole cayenne and whole St. John's wort flower into olive oil for 30 days by hand in quart mason jars before actually straining it. That slow infusion matters mechanically. The longer a fat-soluble compound sits in oil, the more of it actually migrates into that oil compared to the fast heat extraction methods that a lot of more commercial salves would do to cut down on production time. And if you've heard me talk about extraction and things like that, you know that some compounds are fat soluble, some are water soluble, some are alcohol soluble. And so it kind of depends on what you're doing. But with the fat soluble compounds, oftentimes those get left behind because it's just a slow process. But the cool thing about Amine is that she's doing it the old school way in mason jars. And I love how she's doing it. So what's in this formula? Well, let's start with the cayenne because that's kind of the big dog in this formula. It's a traditional warming agent. If you've ever put cayenne on your food, you know how hot it is. The active compound in cayenne is capsaicin. And this is actually one of the better researched mechanisms for topical herbal medicine. For a long time, people assumed capsaicin worked by depleting a pain signaling compound called substance P. But a 2011 review in pain research literature clarified that the real mechanism is something researchers now call defunctionalization. Now, it doesn't necessarily sound good when we're talking about, natural medicine or even functional medicine, but repeated exposure to capsaicin temporarily quiets the specific nerve fibers ending in the skin that are sending pain signals to the brain. And those nerve endings recover over time once you stop applying it. So there's no permanent damage associated with it at all. It's just a temporary kind of blanket over the noise or the whatever you want to call it. It calms down that inflammation and that nerve signaling. In 2024, there was a meta-analysis specifically looking at topical capsaicin for osteoarthritis pain and found a consistent benefit across pooled studies, many different studies on humans, which lines up with what customers have been reporting to Melanie ever since she came up with this product. Now, it's fairly recent to me. She gave me a sample of it, I think, for the first time. Time flies. I don't know. Maybe it's been a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it is a really, really cool product. It's a salve, kind of an ointment type of a consistency. And she's not just layered that capsaicin kind of active ingredient there, but she also has added peppermint and menthol. And that gives you the cooling sensation the moment that it touches the skin. And that's a different, faster acting effect than the cayenne. So you get the cool first, and then the warmth builds over the next several minutes. Now, you can think of something like icy hot in the non-natural medicine space, but of course, all of this stuff is natural. And personally, I feel that it feels more natural. It's not as intense as some of those other things, but still works really, really well. Now, some of what I think makes this product so cool, though, is that it doesn't just stop at the things that are, clinically recognized as pain relievers. There's also that second herb that I mentioned early on, St. John's wort, which in this context is being used topically, not the way that most people know it. Most people hear of St. John's wort as like an oral mood support, kind of natural antidepressive type of a thing. But traditionally, topical St. John's wort has been used to support nerve comfort and ease in muscles and joints. It really is very, very cool because a lot of the pain that people are dealing with now is nerve related pain. And when you think about the St. John's wort combined with the cayenne, it's an awesome combination because both of them work at the nerve level. And so, I just recently did an episode of Vitality Radio on our nerve vitality formula. And I didn't think about it, but I should have probably been recommending this for the topical side of this with the nerve vitality for the internal side of it to help to quiet nerve pain and discomfort that way. There is not as much clinical research on St. John's wort topically as there is internally, but we do know the mechanism of action. And to me, it's a perfect combination. The cayenne with the capsaicin in there, the St. John's wort, and then the cooling effect of the peppermint and menthol just make all kinds of sense to me. The coolest ingredients, definitely menthol. But the ingredient that I get the most excited about in topicals, and you'll hear about it in not just this specific formula, but another one I'm going to talk about as well, is the comfrey. Comfrey is in this formula, and it shows up again, as I said, in other products. And in fact, on the next show, we're going to talk about comfrey for other purposes, but comfrey is a miraculous herb. And if you're familiar with Dr. John Christopher's work, he was a absolute comfrey fanatic. He loved this herb for its knitting purposes, its healing purposes. And I'm so excited that she decided to include comfrey in this formula because it's one of the most clinically validated topical herbs that exists. And it's kind of universal for all things healing and discomfort and that kind of stuff. It's been in Western herbalism for centuries. And the name is a direct description of what it does, the knitting herb. That's what it's been known as for years. It actually helps to support the body's own process of closing and repairing damaged tissue. There's a real mechanism behind that reputation too, not just traditional use. Comfrey root contains a compound called allantoin. Allantoin, which is well documented to support skin cell turnover and the formation of new tissue at the site of application, along with rosmarinic acid, a compound recognized for antioxidant and calming activity right where you put it. The clinical research on this herb goes well beyond pain relief, and I think that's the part that often gets missed. A placebo-controlled trial published in 2004 tested a concentrated comfrey root ointment on 142 patients with acute ankle sprains and found significantly less swelling, better joint mobility, and less pain than the placebo. That same year, a separate trial compared comfrey ointment directly against a conventional topical anti-inflammatory gel in over 160 sprain patients and found comparable results between the two, but 100% natural. And this was just comfrey root in an ointment. It didn't have the cayenne. It didn't have the peppermint. It didn't have the St. John's wort and so on. This is the study that matters most for what comfrey is actually doing at the tissue level. A randomized trial specifically on patients with fresh skin abrasions, compared a higher concentration comfrey extract to a lower dose reference ointment. And the higher concentration group showed measurably faster wound closure with complete healing that arrived several days sooner. So we know that comfrey actually does knit the skin, heal the skin, really, really incredible. And that's, skin, but also I've had tons of success with these types of ointments for years, comfrey-based ointments for sprained ankles, everything from tennis elbow to, other forms of tendonitis, sprains, strains, tears, all that kind of stuff. Huge fan of comfrey. I'm also going to note that these particular trials used standardized concentrated extract because they want to lock in that specific dose. But Melanie's uses the old school, old world herbal infusion form. And so hers is not the exact same stuff that was used in the studies. However, it is the way that it's always been used traditionally. And it's what I have personally always used is the old school type formulas. Not always Melanie's because this one's relatively new, but I've used the Dr. Christopher's Complete Tissue and Bone with excellent success over the years. I think I like Melanie's even better and in terms of this particular formula, in terms of pain relief, because of everything else that it has on board, and especially because of the cayenne in there. Now, rounding out this formula is nettle, which is naturally rich in magnesium, potassium, iron, calcium, and vitamins A, K, and E. And so you have this nutrient density, all of which, of course, can help with healing. And the base is olive oil, which is where she's doing a lot of the extraction, and then beeswax. There's no mineral oil. There are no petroleum products, no synthetic fragrances, and no preservatives. And it's kept in glass. You massage it into the area as needed. Wash your hands afterwards because cayenne and menthol will definitely light up your eyes if you itch your eyes scratch your eyes afterwards. But I'm telling you, love this formula, and some of the feedback that she gets on it is just awesome. This is the salve that people reach for with real long-standing pain, hip pain, joint stiffness that flares with weather changes, disc issues, arthritis, all of that kind of stuff. And one of Melanie's customers actually described nerve pain radiating from her hip down through her lower back, connected to needing a hip replacement, and said that after using this salve, she saw improvement from the very first application, with her shoulder pain resolving immediately and her overall pain becoming far more manageable. Another customer, a man whose wife lives with rheumatoid arthritis, said that she now uses it before bed and sleeps with less joint pain during weather changes, and that his son's shoulder spasm responded better to this salve than to the muscle relaxers prescribed at the urgent care. So pretty cool results. Now, we just brought this into Vitality Nutrition. I have a bottle of each of this formula and the other Melanie's formulas I'm going to be talking about in the Amane brand that we now have at home. And I've also got one in my office because if you've listened to me, you know that I deal with some nerve pain as well. And I've been using it, and so far, so good. Really, really cool. All right. So now let's talk about one that is very different and that I've got a really cool personal testimonial on. This one is very old school. It is a Dr. Christopher original formula. It's called black ointment, also known as drawing ointment or drawing salve. This one is genuinely different from everything else that we're going to cover today because it's not really built around comfort or pain, and yet it can help you with comfort and pain, and I'll explain why. It's actually built around a specific traditional theory that certain herbs combined with pine tar can actually help the body to move something foreign, a splinter, a sliver, a piece of glass, the material that's inside of a boil, up and out toward the surface of the skin so your body can get rid of it. And I had heard about people using this stuff for a long time. I'd never really had the occasion to use it, but I did when I stepped on a piece of glass. In fact, it was here at Vitality. My gosh, probably close to 20 years ago. So in the location we're in now, we've been here 20 years, but I think it was pretty early on. Someone dropped a glass bottle. It broke on our tile floor. And you know how that goes, right? There's these little teeny pieces of glass that you try to sweep everything up or vacuum everything up and you don't find everything every time. Well, I got one of these just below the ball of my foot. And it got in deep, up and in the skin where I could not, and the skin was kind of up over the top of it. And I couldn't get to it with a pair of tweezers. And so I tried to kind of massage it out. It was very painful and I was really struggling with it. And literally, this is the crazy thing. It happened just about 3 feet from where black ointment is on my shelf here at Vitality. I'd never used black ointment before up to that point. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. I could have gone in with a needle. I couldn't have. There's two issues. Okay. I'm just going to tell you. First off, it hurt quite bad, but also I have really ticklish feet. And so a needle and a pair of tweezers, I couldn't even have got it out myself. It definitely would have had to have some support with that. I had to work the rest of the day. At this point, Vitality wasn't so busy that we had 2 or 3 people on staff like we do now. I was there alone. And so it's like, well, I don't have a needle. And now that I think about it, I don't think I had tweezers either. I was just kind of stuck. I was trying to do this with my fingers. So I reached for the black ointment. I did have in our little first aid kit in the back a little gauze pad. So I put black ointment on there and I slathered it on really good to where, it was on there, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch deep or something like that, all around that area, probably about an inch or so circumference around the area where the little shard of glass was. I put the gauze on there and some medical tape, put my shoe back on, and thankfully the gauze kind of cushioned things a little bit. It wasn't super comfortable, but it wasn't killing me. And I don't remember exactly the time frame. I remember this was sometime in the morning. I remember I was working the whole day. So, and back then we were open until 9 p.m. It's only 8 p.m. now. But so I think I was probably dealing with this for a good 8-9 hours or something like that. And I got home. And first off, interestingly enough, the discomfort calmed down throughout the day. I don't remember every detail about this, but I remember a lot of it because it just was so mind-blowing. The discomfort kind of got better throughout the day. And I looked at it that night when I got home, took off my shoe and sock and pulled the gauze off and looked at it and kind of, gently rubbed the black ointment off. And it was interesting. I couldn't tell that I'd had success yet, I guess, but the discomfort wasn't so bad. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this one more time. I slathered it all on again, put the gauze pad on, put the tape on. And the only difference was, I guess, 2 differences. It was the second application and I wasn't on my feet, right? Because I went to bed. And when I woke up in the morning, I pulled everything off and that piece of glass was lodged in the gauze pad, not in my foot. One of the coolest things I'd ever experienced. And the thing is, I had people tell me this kind of stuff before. So it wasn't like I didn't think it would work. It's just that until you see it for yourself, you never really know. So that was my personal experience with it. Let me tell you what's in this stuff. All right. The full ingredient list is extra virgin olive oil, chaparral leaf, comfrey root, of course, red clover blossom, mullein, plantain, chickweed, marshmallow, golden seal, lobelia, poke root, pine tar, mutton tallow, and beeswax. And I would anticipate, based on what I know about these herbs, that there's about 3 or 4 herbs in here that we're actually providing comfort. Comfrey definitely being one of those herbs. Lobelia can be really good for that. Largely, these herbs are in there for their drawing power to actually pull stuff out. And so it's this whole toolkit formula because the pine tar has that long history of topical use for skin conditions. Golden seal and chaparral carry a long traditional reputation in Western herbalism for just skin health and skin support. Marshmallow root and plantain are traditionally considered soothing and moisture retaining agents, keeping the moisture in the area. The theory behind a drying salve is that the tackiness from the tar and beeswax combined with the herbs creates something like a poultice environment, keeps the area moist, and may help the body's own process of pushing the foreign material toward the surface where it can come out on its own. So that's what I did with it. I absolutely loved it. Now, I want to be specific about the safety information here because for FDA reasons, the label does have some very specific guidelines on there that it's not supposed to be applied to broken skin. Now, I guess my skin was broken, but it kind of wasn't. And there was no bleeding or anything like that. The glass had just kind of wedged itself in there, and then the skin flap or whatever's kind of over the top of it. You know what I mean? I think if you've had a sliver or something like that, you know what I'm talking about. So I didn't consider that an issue and wasn't concerned about it anyway, but they don't recommend it like on an open wound, bleeding, this kind of thing. Where it's traditionally used is in intact skin or something like what I was talking about over something that's under the surface, a splinter that won't come out, a sliver, piece of glass, or I've also seen great results, not personally. I thankfully have never had a boil, but I've talked to lots of people that have used it on boils the exact same way. You put the ointment over the boil, you cover it with gauze pad and, let it sit. And it is remarkable. Actually, I've actually had people show me the before and the after with really good success. Now, of the products on this list today, I would say the one that I've had the most personal success with and the most use, it is a product that I've carried now for something close to 30 years now. It is called Body Heat, and it's made by Aloe Life. Now, there's a little redundancy here, and I'll explain why you might use one over the other, because the Body Heat has a lot of things that are kind of similar to that very first product that I talked about from Amane Naturals, which is the deep tissue salve. Okay. So let's jump into Body Heat, and I'll tell you why I use one versus the other. And I'm going to tell you a weird use for it that not everybody's going to be up for, but that I absolutely swear by. This is a warming muscle rub, but it's built differently than most. Base is actually whole leaf aloe vera, which is loaded with incredible nutrient density, including especially minerals to help with healing the skin and all that. It's got none of the crap in it you don't want, petroleum, mineral oil, any of that kind of stuff. The formula also, along with the aloe has MSM, one of the most healing sulfur-containing compounds that there is. I absolutely love this and is fantastic for joint support, tendon, ligament, muscle support, all this kind of stuff. Now, as I said, the formula contains whole leaf aloe as its main base, but then it also has MSM, which is an organic sulfur compound that shows up often in joint and muscle support products internally, but it's fantastic externally as well. It also has menthol and something called methyl salicylate. Methyl salicylate and menthol work together to warm the skin and penetrate deeply into the tissue and cool things down, basically, that inflammation. Now, methyl salicylate is associated with aspirin. It's chemically similar, and I'm fine with that. For one thing, it's a natural source. For another thing, it's topical. You're not absorbing, the bulk of it. You maybe absorb about half of it. As long as you're not slathering on huge areas of skin, I'm not concerned about that at all. If it's an elbow or a knee or your shins or that kind of thing, and I'm going to talk about why it's so good for shins specifically here in a minute. But I love this product. What else is in it? Horse chestnut extract, which actually helps to support the capillaries, which is really, really cool, and white nettle extract. And then it has arnica in it. Now, arnica has centuries of traditional use for bruising and soreness and is one of the most directly studied topical botanicals in this entire lineup that I'm presenting to you today. A randomized trial in 2010 tested a 20% arnica ointment against laser-induced bruising on healthy volunteers and found it reduced the visible bruising score more effectively than a plain petroleum-based control product did. Horse chestnut is traditionally associated with circulatory support, as I said, when applied topically. And it appears here alongside the same nettle we talked about in the deep tissue salve. And it has this amazing impact of basically just helping with blood flow, which of course is going to help with the healing. You can massage this liberally into the area that you need for 1 to 2 minutes. And then of course you're going to want to wash your hands again, because yes, I have used this and I have rubbed my eye, and your eye will get very warm and cold when you do this. Now with Body Heat, as I said, it's in the same vein as deep tissue salve, but let me explain why I recommend it. First off, I would say the body heat is a little quicker acting. If you've got like a here and now owie, it goes on and you feel it right away. And a lot of that is because the aloe base is much more kind of water soluble, gets into the skin a lot quicker than does the oil base and beeswax base of the salve. That being said, I would say it's probably shorter acting as well. So if you've got more of a chronic thing that flares up throughout the day, I think generally the Amane formula is going to be the better option. Also, though, for anything athletic oriented, I mentioned shins before, shin splints. This stuff is incredible for shin splints. I've had so many people over the years tell me this after a runner told me they used it for this, and I started recommending it. You rub it on prior to the shin splint occurring, before you're going to run your 5K or your half marathon or whatever it is that you're running that may create the shin splint. And it seems to be very preventative, but also if that does occur, you still get the shin splint pain. Really, really good for that as well. So I really love it for all that. I also would consider it a great kind of a muscle rub for kind of loosening up the muscle tissue. In fact, one of my favorite things to do with it is to combine it with the next item on my list, which is magnesium lotion or magnesium gel. And you can rub in the lotion or the gel from the magnesium, then the body heat over the top of it. That'll help it to penetrate deeper because the aloe pulls everything in deeper, and that will loosen up the muscle tissue really, really well. So if you've got stiff, achy, sore, tight muscles, any of that kind of stuff, I love the body heat for that. And I also promised a weird use that I use it for. Now, I'm a strange guy. I grew up in a health food store. I do a lot of alternative things, but even the people that do what I do for a living think I'm nuts a lot of times, and that's okay. I can deal with that. I like body heat for any kind of chafed skin. Now, I'm just going to warn you, it will light you up. But if you've got any kind of chafing, I was at, if you're in Utah, you know what I'm talking about, Lagoon yesterday with the grandkids, and it was near 100 degrees. I didn't get any chafing, but those are the types of days that a lot of times that'll happen. Or, you're at the beach and you get the sand and it chafes or whatever it is. Anything where chafing occurs, I'm not kidding you. Body heat is, I can't say this legally. It starts with C and ends with ur. But anyway, it works really, really quickly, really, really well if you can stand the intensity, because it's freaking intense. I'm not going to lie to you, but oh my gosh, once it goes on and you withstand that first 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes, whatever it is, I don't know, I haven't timed it, where it's like, whoo, that's hot. It cools things down, and it is so healing because of the MSM that's in there and the aloe vera that's in there. It is phenomenal. Now, I don't recommend it for sunburns. I recommend just regular aloe, or actually my favorite combination is aloe with our nano silver gel for burns. But for pretty much any kind of chafing, I am in love with this product. But use it with my caution that you start small. Put a little dime size on there, see how it feels, see if you can deal with it. I don't think I'm any tougher than anybody listening to this show. I'm just weirder. Okay, so the next one is magnesium lotion or gel. The brand that I love to go with is Life Flow. And I love magnesium. Nobody loves magnesium more than Jared St. Clair loves magnesium. I think, in fact, I've had I've had listeners to this show say, you know what? You talk about magnesium a lot. Well, I'm sorry. Not everybody listens to every show. And for those of you who do, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you staying with me when you hear repeated information. It's just kind of what it is. And hopefully you're okay with that. But I don't talk about topical magnesium all that often. And topical magnesium is fantastic. Now, there's a few things to know about topical magnesium. First off, it can actually be an alternative to oral magnesium. I don't generally use it as a first use over oral magnesium for a couple of reasons. One is we really don't know how much actually absorbs into the skin. We don't know exactly how much concentration you're getting because it's nearly impossible to measure exactly how much magnesium you're actually getting in the I'll call it a dose of gel or lotion that you're putting on your feet or wherever you're putting it. But what's cool is, as you may know from experience, if you're anything like me, you've taken too much magnesium sometimes and it kind of runs through you, creates that laxative effect. When you're putting it on topically, it never hits the bowel, so it never does that. So you can kind of mega dose, so to speak, magnesium if you're using it internally and then also using it topically on an area of the body that needs it. Now, it's one of nature's greatest sleep aids. You put magnesium on the bottoms of your feet before you go to bed at night. I like the lotion or the gel more than the oil for two main reasons. One is just convenience. You can rub it in much, much more quickly. The oil is like you're rubbing on the feet a long time before it finally absorbs. But the other thing is the oil, depending on your level of sensitivity with your skin, can get a little itchy. And it definitely does for me. And I don't really have that sensitive of skin. So I know over time, especially if you use it in the same spots over and over again, like your feet, it can get a little itchy. The gel or the lotion alleviates that issue. The gel is more concentrated than the lotion. The lotion, I think, personally feels better on the skin. And so that's usually my go-to, but either one works really well. And so what you're doing is basically just getting all the benefits of magnesium, at least at the tissue level, relaxing, calming, soothing. And then you're also getting the amount of magnesium that absorbs into the bloodstream and all of the cellular benefits that magnesium provides, the 300 different enzymatic processes that magnesium plays a role in, the 800 different biological processes that it plays a role in. Absolutely love this stuff. But let's talk a little bit about the actual mechanism of action here. There was work out of the University of Cardiff and the University of Queensland showing that magnesium ions can move through the outer layer of the skin, with hair follicles actually playing a meaningful role in that absorption. But I'm not going to tell you that there's this mountain of large, well-designed human trials proving exactly how much reaches your bloodstream, which is why I said it's not my go-to really. But it is a good option if you feel like you're not getting enough magnesium internally. If you've got a child who won't do a gummy or a powder and can't swallow a capsule, topical magnesium, those little feet that have the really supple skin, because we're talking about a child here, I think is still a really, really good option. And if you've got a kid who's restless, anxious, hyper, any of that kind of stuff, magnesium is great. And if you want to talk about, like parenting or grandparenting, there are a few things that are really interesting here. Sometimes slowing down is tough. I really, really struggle with it. It's not in my nature to slow down. I'm pretty much going all the time. And yet we have our grandbabies over and they do sleepovers with us. I don't know, maybe once every 5 or 6 weeks or something like that. There's 3 of them that come and stay at our house and 2 of us old grandparents, right? And one of the things that I absolutely love about the grandkids coming is it is constant motion until bedtime. And then it's slow down, chill out, calm down. And this is a great opportunity, if your kids will let you do this or your grandkids will let you do this, to get out the magnesium lotion, the magnesium gel, rub it on their feet, read them a story. Maybe one of you does the one of you does the other, whatever it is, calm things down. You're serving that child, you're loving on that child, and you're doing something really healthy for that child. I really like that idea. And now I'm going to tell you one other thing. I just thought of that. It's not in my notes. I've never tried it with my grandkids, but next time they're over, I will see how that goes and see if we can get them to do that without, the feet getting too tickly. All right. Now, I want to give you an honorable mention on this one too. And this one's a little tough because we can't actually put this on our website, but we do sell it at our store in Bountiful. You can call us if you have questions about it. We can throw it in the mail. And the number is 801-292-6662, 801-292-6662. But it's not on our website because it has to do with the website provider and credit card companies. It's a long story. I've talked about it before. But CBD as a topical is fantastic stuff. It works at the actual cannabinoid receptors, which are part of the opioid receptor system in the body, and does differently than any of the other things that I've talked about. And in many cases, CBD with magnesium or CBD with the deep tissue or with the body heat, any of those types of things can work really well, but the CBD balms on their own are really, really good too. We have creams and balms. I won't go much into it, but as far as pain relief goes, some of the best things that we've ever sold. And you just have to kind of test them out and see what you think. We have one by a company called Muscle MX, a local Utah company that people absolutely love. We have another one by Gold Naturals, another local Utah company that people absolutely love. We got another one by CV Sciences. We've got some great ones. They work really well. So if you're looking for a good topical CBD, and especially if you're like, well, I'm not sure which one to try out all these things, just give us a call. We'll help you out. 801-292-6662. Okay, so that's the first episode of my topical medicine cabinet. A few things worth remembering today is that topical support is definitely a legitimate tool. I have had personal success with all of the things that I've talked about, but especially the ones that I've had for years and years and years. And we know absolutely that cayenne, comfrey, magnesium, arnica have real research showing that they really work. Definitely worth checking out. All right. The next episode right after this one will be topicals for other things, everything from acne to skin irritation and everything in between. We'll jump into that on the next one. Thank you in the meantime for listening to this episode and any episode that you listen to. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube yet, go to youtube.com, find Vitality Radio there. We have shorts on there. We have full episodes as well. If you haven't left a review, you can do that on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. You can even leave messages on Spotify. I try to get back to those as quickly as I can. And you can definitely comment on the YouTube videos. It's a great way to share the show if you're into what we're doing. Also, if you've not seen our new store in South Ogden, but you're in the area, come check it out. It's still called Healthy Me right now, but it will be called Vitality as soon as our signs are ready. We'll get those up there as well. And that's it for now. Thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.